Hi guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be having a look over a pretty old knife, but one that is probably known to most of you guys if you live in countries where the knife laws are a little bit more strict. I'm a lot of time in the UK, so we have some pretty strict knife laws surrounding what you can carry every day if you don't have a specific reason. If you use a knife for work, or you're doing some sort of activity, you're camping or bushcrafting or whatever, you can use what you need to for that activity. But if you just want to carry a knife randomly around with you in case you need one, you need to adhere to UK law, which basically stipulates it can't be longer than 3-inch blade. It cannot be locking. So it's got to be some sort of slip joint or double detent. And the blade, now there is some argument about this, whether it's the blade or the cutting edge of the blade. I think the law defines it as the cutting edge, but there's been some toing and froing on that one, legally speaking, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into this review. But with all that in mind, there is a host of UK EDC friendly knives available that people can carry just for everyday use, because knives are one of the most useful tools on the whole planet, one of the oldest tools on the planet, and they're responsible for great leaps forward in human civilization. So they're not tools of evil unless people themselves use them for evil purposes, but most of us use them for everyday tasks and work. So this is the Boker XS, and it is a slip joint design, so it doesn't lock, it simply folds shut and opens back up, and most people in the UK would know that as a penknife type of knife. That's what they generally get referred to, but this one has a bigger blade than most people would be used to on what they would refer to as a penknife. It's sort of bigger than what they're used to seeing, and the handle's bigger as well, and it looks maybe a bit more tactical. On the practical side of that, it's a very useful knife. The slip joint's really strong, so it's got a strong retention. It doesn't close easily, so that's a good thing, because obviously if you were doing some kind of motion using it, you don't want that to close up on you. The downside to that is, although it's got these thumb studs for opening, it's very, very difficult to open one-handed, and it's quite uncomfortable because those thumb studs are quite sharp around the edge, so they really bite into your finger. It's a lot better with gloves actually, but it's not something that you won't find yourself fidgeting with that, believe me. It's you know, you do it once a day and maybe that's enough for you. It's much easier to just do it two-handed, as you would commonly with knives with a little pinch point there. So we'll do a top down on this, have a quick look over the features and the materials, and I'll talk a bit about the blade and some of the considerations. This is probably was my most carried UK EDC knife until the good old Twisted Assisted Junzi came out, which I found much easier to open and shut. The blade on it was just as useful, and it looks a little less tactical, but there's a thing with the blade length that I'll get to that made the Junzi also a little bit more appealing to me. But you may like these Boker XS's. I mean, I sometimes carry this still, and it's certainly a very usable and practical knife. So let's have a look top down. So we've got the Boker XS here. You can see it's got G10 scales nothing wrong with those. A pocket clip, not deep carry, it's a stainless steel pocket clip, quite a nice clip, very, very solid, but not at all deep carry, but it can be repositioned over to the other side there. Get the blade out. Nice shape of blade, and it's got a bit of a coating on it. I'm not entirely sure what the coating is, but it looks a bit like sort of a gunmetal. Quite an aggressive blade shape on there, but useful. It's easy to sharpen. One of the possible downsides is it's only 440C. This is quite an old knife. I don't know if they've released any modern variants of it, and it doesn't have a sharpening choil, but what it does have is a choil here, and the good thing about that is that when you grip it, your finger can sit in there and it stops it from shutting. So that's a very clever design. It has some jimping on the top that you can rest your thumb on. The downside with that jimping is it's actually quite sharp, a bit like the thumb studs on there. I find those both very angular, the jimping's very angular, and that does not lead to the most comfortable things on your thumb. Like I said, it's actually a better knife if you're wearing like a pair of mechanics gloves. It's a lot more pleasant to use. Then down to what I think is the slightly more controversial issue for me. So if we take our rule and measure the cutting edge of the blade, we're below 3 inches, so that's legal. But if we were to come back to the full blade length, we're just over 3 inches. Now, my issue with that is that UK police aren't legal experts. They know a little bit about different laws. They're a bit like GPs, you know, they're not like heart surgeons. GPs know a bit about all the different medical things, enough to kind of get by. And the problem with UK police stopping you is going to be they may not have read the exact wording. All they know is that it needs to be a blade that's less than 3 inches and it can't lock. Now they're going to see a knife like this, and it's certainly going to arouse their interest because it looks in a certain manner, you know, a little bit tactical, like I said. And then they're going to do this very simple thing, and they're going to get it and they're going to measure it, and they'll say, oh, it's over 3 inches, sir. I'm afraid you might need to come with us. Now, I've heard people say, yeah, but you know, it'll all be all right in the end. Yeah, it might all be all right in the end, but I haven't got 6-7 hours to sit unpaid in a police cell waiting for things to be okay while I get a solicitor. I would rather have a knife that just didn't have that ambiguous blade length on there, because I'm pretty sure that it would end up being defined by that cutting edge. I'm not a legal expert, but it's not something I'm particularly keen on testing myself, and having been at the wrong end of things in my security job and seeing how these things work out, and people can be treated sometimes not always fairly. That's another reason it's just easier for me to carry the Junzi if I'm heading into town. I live very rurally, and I have the job that I have basically dictates that I need to carry knives anyway, so that's not really an issue unless I'm in the town. Now, it's very hard to close one-handed, and it really snaps shut. It does have sort of slight detent that you can feel about there. Not incredibly noticeable, certainly not as noticeable as the one on the Junzi, and it's actually a little bit better there. It's kind of does it once, twice, it sort of stays there in a detent, so that's more noticeable, certainly in that direction, but not so much in the other. And then it locks straight out there. Well, there's your overview of the Boker XS. I hope that gives you guys some food for thought, and take care. I'll see you next time.